Hello again. I'm Jon Kirkman. I'm a broadcaster and a music journalist based in the UK. This is the one we've been waiting for this year, isn't it? The Beatles, Let It Be. There's a lot of Beatles activity at the moment, not least of all because the new film series, because it's going to be 3 two-hour episodes, I believe, which are going to air and debut on Disney just before Christmas of Get Back, and it's something we've all been waiting for, and the trailers for that film have been absolutely amazing. This is, of course, the redux of the Let It Be album. Beautifully packaged, 6 discs, including 1 Blu-ray disc. Should we open this? I think so. Now, I'll start with this first, because this is an amazing book. And it covers a lot of the sessions. The sessions really started in January. I believe it was January the 2nd, 1969. Now, the Beatles had just had huge success with the Double White album. Just the previous November, they'd also released the soundtrack to the film Yellow Submarine. They started rehearsals in Twickenham Film Studios. Now, this is how the boys looked in early 69, but even by the end of the January, early February, they changed again. It looked a lot different. Let It Be was seen as a bit of a miserable film. It was a documentary as such, how the boys were recording the album, but there's a lot of sadness, and it was a little bit dark, and I don't mean by that it wasn't well lit. It was a little bit dark. They weren't getting on, or so it seemed. If you look at what's come out so far from Get Back, they're having a great time. They're laughing and joking. They're playing music. They're sort of responding to the camera. They've really warmed to things, and they're having a great time. And there's some really funny knockout moments in that film. And of course, there's a couple of songs in there that are played that would go on to become recorded for the various solo albums. Now, here is like the opening of the book, essentially. Look at that. It's a lovely little proof sheet there. Now, this was not the last Beatles album. It was recorded before Abbey Road, which was, in fact, the actual album, although this came out after Abbey Road. And many said, cardboard tombstone. Personally, I don't think so. Now, there's Paul McCartney writing an introduction to it, and a picture of Paul. Pre-beard, I think, by the look of that. Because it's always like the beardy years with the Beatles, because they all went through phases of having facial hair and a beard, and I always date these things by people's hairstyles and their facial hair. Now, there's a typical setup at Apple. That's in the basement of 3 Savile Row, and that's a basic setup of how they recorded things. Things got off to a not a great start in Twickenham. It was pretty horrible. Once they switched to the Apple Studios, it became a lot better. And Billy Preston came in and certainly lifted all their spirits. Now, here's one from Twickenham. And they look a bit glum there, to say the least. And as John Lennon said, it was cold. We were going into this huge room. It was cold and miserable. And he said that made us feel even worse, So I think by the time they got to Apple, now there they are in the control room. Now, they had to borrow equipment from EMI because Magic Alex, who was, he became a friend of John's, and John was kind of entranced with him, and he thought he was going to be the big electronic genius to front Apple Electronics. Sadly not. They had to rip out the studio that Alex had prepared for him because it just didn't work. So they got in mobile equipment from EMI. That's the sort of desk they were using at Abbey Road, you see. And things started getting a lot better once they got there. And because Glyn Johns was in charge of the recording. There's another one from Twickenham. And again, look at it. It's a film studio. And if you've ever been in a film studio, as I have, these are huge cavernous rooms, and you're trying to make it smaller so you can all see each other. As you can see, they're all playing within eyesight of each other. That's when bands rehearse, And normally it's in a small space, but because they were making a film, I guess, I thought they should have made it in a big film set. But really what the Beatles needed was them actually in the recording studio in a confined space. And I think that's where they came up with some of their best material. Again, it's you get comments. You know, that became part of I Got a Feeling, which was a song by John. That was Everybody Had a Hard Year. There's video footage of John performing that, sat in a seat in Tittenhurst Park with Yoko, and they incorporated that into I Got a Feeling. Now, here's some things you'll recognise. This is the rooftop. Beatles' last concert, believe it or not, although the audience was unseen. They probably preferred it that way. But, you know, every time I go to London, I'll go to Savile Row and I'll look up to the roof. Now, I was lucky enough to be allowed on the roof. And I have to say that it's, you know, one of the moments of my life, because it's changed a bit, Apple, because obviously they ripped out the entire guts of the building. And believe it or not, it's something a lot of my friends know. I actually got a job at Apple as a tape operator. And I went down there and it was great and it was, wow, brilliant. And then 3 weeks later, I got another letter saying, I'm sorry, you can't have the job. The Beatles have decided to close down the studio. So I had a job and then I didn't have a job. Which, you know, hey, but I was impressed because the letter came on Apple paper with Apple at the top, and the typewriter wasn't your actual print, it was cursive writing print, so it was like typed out and it was signed by the studio manager, and if you held it up to the light, the watermark in the letter was actually an Apple. So I've still got it somewhere, I'm sure, but it was a wonderful experience. I'm going down to the Apple studios, but again, when I went on the roof, it was after they'd redone the inside. It's now an insurance building, it was when I went, and it's a very imposing Georgian building, and it's a bit of a banking area, and there's a police station literally about 50 yards down the road. So when you see in the film that the police came and tried to stop them playing, but they left it a while, in fairness. They left it till, the band had been playing there for about 40 minutes before they came and knocked on the door. And you see the banker in the film going, well, it's all very good, this music in its own place, but I think it's very wrong of them to disturb the business. And I'm thinking, yeah, well, you may have thought that, but hey, we're talking about the Beatles here, and I don't care what anybody says. This gives you an idea of how the Beatles were in Twickenham. They're all huddled together in the middle of this huge film lot at Twickenham Film Studios, and it can't have been nice for them, particularly at the beginning of January. Goodness me. It's like, what a miserable start to the year that was. When they transferred to the Apple studios, it was much better. There's a fabulous shot of them all. Just out of sight, I think there's Billy Preston on keyboards. That's on the roof. How wonderful is that? This is how I want to remember the Beatles, having a great time playing live. And they really warmed to it as well. Even George, who wasn't keen at first, really got off on it in the end. And it's like, it's just something very special. And I think there's a lot of things, there you go, we don't know what went on because all we had was Let It Be and the album. Now we're going to find out. And there's a great book out as well called Get Back. That's Paul, of course, and he'd switched back to the Hofner violin bass because the theme of Get Back was let's get back to the way we used to make albums in the past. Let's record them and let's rehearse them, record them, and that's it. So he was playing the Hofner violin bass then, which of course he plays now. He'd stopped playing that on a lot of Beatles sessions from 1965 onwards. Paul was actually playing the Rickenbacker bass that he was known for playing in the 70s and early 80s. But he switched back to the Hofner violin. I had one of these too. They used to go out of tune roughly when you got to about there. Around about the 12th fret, they go out of tune. But Paul's had his fixed, and it sounds absolutely amazing. Sadly, I don't have my Hofner violin bass anymore. But hey, whatever. So there's lots of things in here, various pictures from the sessions. Paul had actually worn that shirt for many years. Paul's obviously very careful with his clothing, didn't throw anything out. Probably a precursor to all those people who say you should reuse all your own clothes. Paul was doing that back in the 60s and 70s. He wore that shirt a lot. You'll see a lot of photos with Paul there. Again, lots of ephemera in here, clips and sort of photos. And look at that. Does John Lennon look miserable there? No, not at all. He's having a good time. And this is the great thing about Let It Be and the Get Back project, because it wasn't miserable. It just looked miserable because of the edit and the cut of the film. Now here's another interesting photograph. As we know, Paul had a beard throughout the Get Back sessions, and also, that was like the cover. And I note the difference. This is an American advert. You know why? Because the apple is red. If you bought Let It Be in America, the label was red, not green, as it was in the UK. Now here's an interesting photograph. Paul, clean shaven. This is at the tail end of the Get Back sessions. As we know, Paul shaved his beard off. He was clean shaven when he married Linda Eastman, aka Linda McCartney, in March 1969. So this is the end. But it's still, you can say it's still the Beatles, obviously. But again, they were changing all the time. And I always date this. So I think this is probably somewhere in February. The line between Get Back and Let It Be and Abbey Road is very fine, because Billy Preston was involved in the Abbey Road sessions as well. So, again, it's wonderful to see all these things. Now, here's what you get here, of course, is all the various tracks on the discs, which I'm going to show you now. So that's the book, and it's worth it for that itself. Now, black and white photos here on this particular one. What you get here, there we go. They're talking up Get Back on here, rightly so. You can get the book there. That's a must-have as well. This was the photo which appeared on the Double Blue album, 67 to 70. They did two albums, 62, 66, where they did the original picture. It was very like the Please Please Me cover. This is EMI. This is in the, if you like, the landing of EMI. There's all the various floors, and they were looking over that. They wanted to recreate that as they looked then. So that, I think, will have been taken in 1969, because John's got his beard, George's hair is longer, although he went clean shaven shortly after this, before growing the beard for the Abbey Road era. Now, look at that. This is wonderful. There you go, you get the Blu-ray disc over there. That's the original album, which has been remixed. This here was the version. I had this on bootleg for many years. This is the version of the album that was mixed, presented to the Beatles for release as Get Back by Glyn Johns. He did two mixes essentially. I've got both mixes. There's just one in here. There's outtakes here as well, and there's the EP, which includes things like Across the Universe, which ended up on the album. But the thing about this, the Beatles refused both this mix and the next mix that he did. And of course, that brought, when they needed another album after Abbey Road, that's why they brought in Phil Spector, much to Paul McCartney's dislike. He did not like what Phil Spector had done to the album. And he got his own back in a way by releasing Let It Be Naked a lot later. But and that was an official release. That was more in keeping with the way Let It Be should have been, or Get Back should have been. But all the Beatles knocked back Glyn Johns' mix. And it's actually quite interesting. It's a good album, I've got to say. It certainly gives you a different view of Let It Be. And again, that's a wonderful photo, isn't it? March 1969 at EMI, and recreating the Please Please Me, if you like, photo session. And this is an album that really does bear going into in depth. It's beautifully presented, and I must say that the box set is something you need to get. I think they got to #1 with this a couple of weeks ago, certainly in the UK. Let It Be, 6-disc set, a must-have. I can't wait to have the Get Back series. It's 3 2-hour episodes, which are going to air on Disney, I believe, just before Christmas. I can't wait for this to come out, or the Get Back film to come out, and also I'll be interested to see what they do next, because they're going to be working backwards next. We've had Pepper, we've had the White Album, we've had Abbey Road, and now we've had Let It Be. I'm hoping Revolver. is going to be the next album they do in the expanded edition. But for the meantime, Let It Be out in expanded format, still to come, Get Back, the film. And they're also reissuing the original Let It Be film as well on DVD, which has only ever been available, I think, on Laserdisc in Japan. It's not widely available. I mean, I've got it like a lot of people, but it's just a kind of rip from the Laserdisc. But it'd be interesting to see how they've cleaned that up, because I think they've done a great job with a lot of the footage that I've seen in trailers for the Get Back movie. But there we have it. The Beatles, Let It Be. Except that they didn't let it be, did they? They continued, and they still do continue to this day. I mean, the saying that you'll probably be playing Beatles music in 100 years' time, I don't think it's going to even be that. I think it's going to be longer. I think as long as people are playing music, they're going to play the Beatles music, and long may that continue.